So welcome. Hi, I'm Riki Thompson. I teach in the School of Interdisciplinary Arts and Science. I'm in writing studies, and I'm going to talk about my work with the group around connecting connection and belonging through career purpose. So the course that I integrated an assignment with, a couple of assignments, is TWRT 211. It's called Argument and Research in Writing. It is basically a class that fulfills the W requirement, and so we get a lot of students across campus from sophomore to seniors. And this class had 18 students who participated at least in these assignments. The class was completely online asynchronous. And as you can see, these are just some of the majors, right? Psychology, engineering, the nursing students. We had some students who were saying they're pre-law, and then writing studies. So what I did is, to give you some context, first I have some anchor assignments that are pretty consistently a part of how I teach this class. And one of them, because it's an online class, is a weekly discussion board workshop. So students are using Canvas discussion boards in order to share the assignment draft or the brainstorming activity they're working on. And then they have to give each other feedback. And then I also give them feedback. And so peer review, peer feedback, and revision is one of the learning objectives for this class. So they're constantly thinking about how to improve their writing and what they're moving towards, which for us is a public-facing popular article. I used to do a research essay, and I've kind of given up on that over the years because I've noticed that doing more of a popular article allows us to have a shorter piece where we can still spend time on the research and evidence-based analysis work, where they're not so caught up in trying to write a lot, but rather I'm able to really focus in on little pieces at a time. And it gives them a chance to work on research, and also they feel the reality of a real audience because they also have to disseminate it publicly somehow at the end of the quarter. So for the career readiness part, I integrated an anchor assignment both at week 1 as a assessment, which I have to say, Amanda, I think was part of suggesting how this may go, and then also a week 10 reflection. And I usually do a week 10 reflection, so I basically use this bookend kind of thing where they did intake with the NACE career competencies inventory activity, and they looked at where they already have strengths and where they may want to build. And then at week 10, they took it again, and then they reflected on if they'd grown any ways or if they noticed anything. And I had them tie it to the learning outcomes for the course. So what I most noticed that showed up for students, not surprisingly, out of the career competencies, and this is the language of the competencies here, communication showed up as the one that they felt they grew the most in. Of course, it's a writing course, so the learning objective specifically worked on that. And then critical thinking, they noticed, especially not just doing research, but learning to assess sources better, what made it credible and dealing with bias. And then the one that kind of surprised me was peer feedback loops were recognized as a really important way to learn how to be a good team player or teamwork as a career competency. Now, for anybody who has ever taught writing, and I know there's some of you in here, peer review for years has been the dreaded thing students didn't want to do because they think it's stupid and they don't want to hear from other people that don't know what they're doing. They just want to hear from the teacher. So this was actually a really interesting thing that they were starting to value peer review in a different way, I noticed, through connecting it to this competency. The area that they all seem to need to grow, they said, is, networking and professional development. They're like, I don't know this. I need to work on this. So also, what did it look like in practice when they did the reflection? Well, if you look at the 4 kind of yellow boxes, these were the competencies that they spoke to. So they would connect what did critical thinking look like, and they went, moving from summarizing sources to synthesizing. That's how I learned that. So part of it is, in my reflection assignment, they had to actually look at and identify some of the things they did. So writing for a real audience also showed up as a really high impact practice that I knew it was, but to really hear them write it in the reflections was kind of different. So many of them talked about how writing a popular article versus a research paper gave them a chance to actually write something a little more fun, which I don't hear that very often, by the way, in composition classes, but I heard this from a psych major. These are pseudonyms, by the way. And then another one talked about, like Ben, the engineering major, was like, I had to translate my research to everyday people. And I said, think about you're teaching this maybe to your family. And they were like, I can imagine those people. So this also deals with one of the problems we have in writing studies about composition classes are trying to teach students to imagine the university, which means imagine yourself as a scholar, which is not something you can imagine yourself as. It's not a community you belong to already. So helping them connect to their own community was really helpful. So one of the things I'd like to point out, I think was the big part of this, is if you're going to use reflection, for example, thinking about how you teach students to actually notice their learning. So it's explicitly teaching metacognition, teaching students how to learn. So my prompt asked them, name a specific peer whose feedback was helpful. Identify the moment that it changed your work. Connect that to your revision process. I also should have added this to the button here, but connect it to the learning outcome for the class. I also find this helps me get more effective student evaluations at the end because they've already started thinking about whether or not they learned what we thought we were going to learn, right? So kind of the key point here is that the reflection in this way, when it's connected to the career assessment inventory, what really I found really useful and surprising is that it didn't just help students reflect on, here's how I grew this quarter, which I've usually asked them, how have you grown? Where do you still want to work on? But they also start saying here's what I have to do next. It did give them a next step roadmap, way to think about, here's what I want to do if I want to get a job. I apparently need to work on these particular things. So it was very anchoring in a really productive way. So my last slide is really about this is, I think, the model that I would suggest to people to think about if you're using reflection activities, or at least what worked in my class, is this idea of timing matters, having kind of repeated checkpoints, whether it's beginning, middle, end, whatever, but kind of having an intake and a follow-up, which a lot of people around here I know already do in their teaching. And then the other thing, when I talk about intentional reflection, is really being explicit, teaching students how to reflect. Students have learned how to reflect on how they feel prior to college in a lot of cases, but they haven't really been able to learn how to reflect on what it is they're learning and how they're learning it. So that gives them a really good language that will also prepare them for their career as they have to put their resumes together and think about jobs. So last part, thinking about different kinds of assignments, what you do. I found definitely public writing has been a really interesting way. Students are finding it very authentic. They like knowing that somebody else might really read it besides me and their classmates. So thinking about how high impact practices can connect to it, I find to be really helpful. So anyways, that's what I did. I hope that was helpful for you, but I really did appreciate working with this group on kind of connecting the career connection aspect. So thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Julia Dancis, and I'm a professor in the social sciences department. And I want to talk to you about my community engaged child development class. So this is a really long title, but essentially what I was trying to do is focus in on communication as an avenue for supporting students' launch pad into their careers. Cool. So zooming in, I want to share about the assignment that typically follows the whole class. I do a scaffolded 5-part assignment where students get to think about what is it that they care about related to child development? What are the issues that keep them up at night? And then how can they learn everything they can about that issue? And then in a variety of different ways through peer-reviewed research, see what the news and other public media sources are talking about it, and then go talk to someone about it who is involved in it, and then think through how they want to reimagine their community of child development. So that's the high-level project that I've been doing. Yes, here it is. And my goal in this project is to apply developmental science theories to the real world application. So already we're in the area of trying to support students in thinking about how this relates to something that they're interested in. And the way that I've taught this class is I really want all things that we're doing to connect to what they're passionate about, right? Anna Setsenko is very clear about how we want to matter in the world, and learning is going to be so much more significant to us if it matters to us, and then we can have that reciprocal relationship with our learning. So this is the foundation of that assignment as it is, even without any changes. And then I took this professional development and they were like, maybe infuse some more career stuff. So I want to share with you some of the revisions that I did. And just a heads up, this is happening in real time, spring quarter. So that's where we are right now. So I won't have some of these beautiful data that Riki had. Okay, so in the original project, as I said, we framed it around students' interests and passions. Cool. But in the revision, I framed it around their career interests, which is still related to their interests and passions. And this might seem a little amorphous, but every time we talk about it, I just say, think about an issue, a challenge, something that you care about, that you plan to do something about, something that you want to help you explore your possible career paths. And so keeping this language consistent around, we're doing this not just because it's interesting to you so that you can learn better, but also as a portal to developing your career pathway. And then, as I mentioned before, we had this series of written assignments and a deliverable of choice. So they could do a podcast, they could create a curriculum, they could write a policy proposal, lots of different ideas, which I thought was really awesome in giving them that choice. But in the revision, I wanted to zoom in so that they could deepen specific skills. So what I did for the revision is, instead of a series of written assignments, I had them do a presentation series. So that's what we're currently doing. They've got 3 presentations they have to give. The first one they already did. It's on the selection of their developmental issue. It's 3 to 5 minutes. It's a quickie, basically like a lightning talk like this. And then the second one is on a problem statement and an evaluation rubric. So they learn everything down to the bottom about their issue. And then they say, okay, if a community, a policy group, an organization is going to do something about this, here are the things that I think, based on all the research that I've done, they should do. So they're developing a problem statement, new activity, and then they're also creating this rubric. So they have these metrics of if something is going to be successful. Lots of new activities. So this is happening next week. They're really freaked out by it because they've never done anything like this, but they're also excited. And then the third one is, using the rubric that they've created, they're going to evaluate a community initiative that's happening here in Tacoma or Pierce County or in Washington. Yeah, cool. Well, yes. The reason that I think that this is going to be successful is because a couple of reasons. One is that they're going to get this deeper career exploration. They're really thinking through not just what am I interested in, but what am I going to do? And also in taking a look at specific community initiatives, community organizations, this could potentially be a pathway to an internship, to a job, to a volunteer opportunity, things that they don't know are already happening in the community. I think that students notoriously think that they want to start a nonprofit or start something, but they don't know people are already doing this, and how can they actually get involved. So that part feels exciting to me. And then additionally, they're really working on their communication, specifically public speaking skills. And part of the evaluation is not just, okay, did you do the content well and are you applying it well, but also how are you elevating your craft of presentation? So we've spent a lot of time this term being like, here are some tips for how to give effective presentations to specific audiences. So that's clear in the rubric. And then, well, finally, being able to articulate these skills that they're building. So every time we talk about what they're doing, we say, and this is good because of X, Y, and Z. So just being able to say to students, okay, this is what we're doing and here's why we're doing it, I think will also help them when they're going for jobs to be able to say, here's what I developed while I was in this class. And as I said, I don't have the completed data, but I think it's going well. We just got some myself, and I just got some midterm feedback. That we did, and it looks like they're like, I like the presentations, I'd rather do this in a paper, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's going well so far. Who's next?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And I am not an academic by background. I am a 30-year retired Fed. I'm a CPA, and I spent my career as an internal auditor in government. And so now I teach accounting at all levels here at the University of Washington, Tacoma. And one of the things that I brought from my previous background is that for graduating students going into accounting or really into any business discipline, Excel competency is table stakes. And we don't have program learning objectives that, intentionally, require us to have students develop that skill. So I've started doing it in the 200 level accounting courses I teach. What you're going to see here is the winter quarter adaptation of what I brought into Microsoft Excel enhancement to learning over the past couple of years. And yes, the Milgard School is up for AACSB reaccreditation, and this does align with that. So, that's icing on the cake, if you will. This is T Accounting 210, which is Financial Accounting 1, the very first accounting course that students here take. It's one of the prerequisites for the business administration major. So we've got a mix of students who know they're going into accounting, students who know they're going into other disciplines within business, and some in other majors entirely that are taking this as an elective. So I've got the accountant track and the client track all in one. So I teach Excel along with the different introductory chapters in accounting that I cover. They do a regular assignment to reinforce that learning, and then I've added 4 Excel assignments to it. And I wasn't smart enough or organized enough to do a pre-post survey, so dual purpose end of course survey is going to cover that. I had 33 students in winter quarter. 25 of them thought the 20 points for taking the survey was worth it, so they did. And here's what we found. 32% had no previous exposure to spreadsheet software. So this was all new to them. The others, the 68% had some previous experience, mostly with Excel, some with Google Sheets, some with both. Well, what did the 4 assignments do for them? And I was really pleased to see that, most got some benefit out of it, and, an awareness of a need for more. Had some that were close to power users anyway that, they feel really confident. Then I ask a third question, an open-ended question where, I want them to tell me a little bit more about the experience, and they could say whatever they want. And most found the exercise, the exercises, fairly simple once they understood that no, you do have to use formulas. You can't just use your calculator and type the number in. That's not going to build your skills. And, so, that was good for them. They recognized, a need to learn more, which, that will be available to them. Little bit of frustration with the rigidity of the tool, because I used Excel within Microsoft or within McGraw-Hill Connect, the publisher learning management system where all of their assignments were, and I set it up for auto grading, so it wasn't going to let them get away with not using a formula. There's usually more than one way to do something in Excel, and this locked it down a little more than, say it needed to in the wild. But the struggle, I think was worth it because it's going to mean a little more as, they develop their skills more in whether it's in accounting or management, marketing, etc. They left the class with something, with the beginnings of something they'll be able to use. And I've got 7 seconds left. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Deveeshree Nayak and I am a faculty in the School of Engineering Technology in the IT program. So for my presentation, I kind of provided like the assessment of building career ready through the reflection and practice. What basically I do in my classes, which is a 497 class, which is a internship class where undergraduate students also take, and it is a requirement in our program that they have to go through an internship program or they will take a replacement of 481 class for graduation if they are not able to secure any internship for 2 years. And majority of the time, most of our students are able to. And the definition of internship not only have to be paid one, it can be unpaid in the projects. And when I met Dawn, I think couple of years back, at that point of time, there was, I invited Dawn to talk about like career readiness, the resources, what we have as a campus to offer to our students, and also tri-campus level. And then I think that 2 years back, I'm forgetting because I implement career centers resources all the time in my all classes, so please forgive me. So this career ready DIY survey, which is I use and as a part of my course, which is basically is as a technical students, they face a lot of challenges, particularly students' adaptability, and communication, because we are so much focused on technical tools. In the interaction of technical tools, we forget like we are interacting with humans. And professional awareness, particularly IT job opportunity, and there is an elephant in the room, which is AI. And how can we incorporate in very much, and still students can follow their passion. Some people want to work for non-profits, community practices, some people work in healthcare sectors. There are different organizations. So through this internship project, students not only learn about artificial intelligence, but how to use responsibly artificial intelligence in various subjects. And they also learn about cybersecurity, which is another domain I work with. Excuse me. So what I want them to do, and it is like I implemented in last summer during fall as well, that in the beginning of the 10 weeks, the first week of the quarter, they take this survey where they focuses on NACE competency, where there is communication, critical thinking, and the 4 pillar of the critical thinking, communication, and professional awareness, they kind of look for. And it is very interesting to them. For the first time, all of the students, and I go one-on-one with them because this is as an internship, it's a personal project, and I give that this is the first time they thought about career readiness. Like when we talk about, like Bonnie told us that sense of purpose, they kind of reflect back. out of the course structure, that how can I look for certain professional readiness so that once I get out of UW circle, how can I implement my knowledge into the greater purpose of our community services, or they work in Fortune 500 companies. And with this quick, under 10 minutes, they were able to see where they stand. And the score actually provided them where they stand. And majority of my students actually focused on interviewing a person from the area they want to go, like for example, entry-level IT jobs, or data science, or security, like how security, as a security professional, a day look like. So through this, they kind of like expanded, it gave them the courage to reach out, because before that they are surrounded by faculties or career professionals within UW Tacoma. This particular survey, through this, actually helped them to go search out LinkedIn and ask someone that, can I go for a coffee to interview you, because this is one of my assignments in the class, which is 497 class. And they focuses on the competency of NACE and social capital, like a expanding of gathering, because before they used to send like connections without even introducing themselves on LinkedIn. And that's one of the things. There is career mobility. They kind of thought about like granular level, how can they enhance their not only communication skills, but the language itself, because we IT people, believe me or not, we speak different language other than English, which is, I apologize, you might have heard from like, troubleshooting, which is this week only happened. Some people are not able to even log in to their own office. It happened to me. So, and life design mindset, like IT is a design mindset, how can they expand? Like, you want an opportunity and you are not even able to introduce yourself on LinkedIn platform. Many people never even got into Handshake and complain about like, I am not able to get an internship. Well, Handshake is there. How many times you visited Career Center? So this particular internship, they have to make a visit, schedule an appointment with our Career Center, who will take a look on their resume, give a feedback, and both pre-resume submission and post-resume submission. So significantly, this is the time they reflect on themselves. One of the things was the goal setting is that they can focus on one or two, particularly professional communication and outreach. And outreach means this particular work, especially in this assessment, which is anybody can do in their class, not only thinking about like how to expand the professional circle, but how to use the tools and resources available in UW Tacoma. Some people wanted to interview some of their professors, which is from IIS, or some others like writing class or even library, but because they wanted to pursue a career as an IT professional in that particular industry. Some people wanted to apply their IT skills in healthcare. So they reach out to a healthcare professional, data science, lot of things which literally ongoing development. And that is like, I'm really, really passionate about, because when I was trying to jot down the data, I was thinking which data I do, because in every class I apply this, which was very difficult for me to jot down. The one thing which student experience was their identity strength. In IT, especially, if we talk about representation, which is very male, female, people of color, gender representation is, we still work to do. That's what I want to put it in a diplomatic way, that we still lot of work to do, especially in IT and cybersecurity as well. So identity as a strength. This particular survey helped them to reach out through LinkedIn, through networking, through different applications, through Handshake, give the courage how to introduce themselves and expand that they have something to offer. And one student told me that he just walked into a mechanic shop, car mechanic shop, and asked, can I get an internship just helping you out as a tech support? And he got the job and it was paid. True story. So one of the things, and he was surprised. First of all, he thought that it was like a no-no, extreme rejection. Second of all, having the guts to go and open up And third, the owner even hired him and decided to pay him, which is really, really like a good story of success. And that's what I'm talking about when I say like identity, recognition of growth area, that they never even thought that they can do this. And through this, and then reframing low scores as their opportunity, like certain things, like some people are introvert like myself, and I tell them, welcome to the, like, you're preaching to a choir. Most of IT and computer science professionals are extremely introvert. We don't want to talk to people, but it takes time to grow. Some of my students from last summer who did this in cooperation with Agentic AI and now working in Boeing. And they also got other internships through this process as well. Some other grants also they got into. We also do a lot of competitions like Capture the Flag competitions. I took some of those students who participated in this internship to Spain to present their research work. And one student is now in high school pursuing his master's. And so there are a lot of success in a very, very, what I can say, graph manner. So there is not one symbol of success. There are many ways of success. So it not only improved the connections of their presentation, connections, new challenges as well. The impact was very stronger, awareness, and real-world readiness. So the takeaway is that career readiness through this particular process, we can implement very diverse background and in every subject and every class. Thank you for listening.
Good afternoon. Today, I'm talking about analyzing rhetorical situations in the disciplines, an assignment that we often do in first year writing. And in particular, I'm talking about teaching transfer in the stretch. And with I got to introduce myself. I'm Jacob Martens. I'm an associate teaching professor in writing studies. The class that we're talking about is a two-part class. It's first year students. It happens either in fall or winter, and then the subsequent section usually happens right after it, but not always. We're working with students who have identified themselves as needing extra time to take this sequence. Most students, or many students, take it first time in Core 101, but I'm working with students that took this stretch class last quarter. So today I just want to talk about an assignment redesign, and I want to talk about some specific examples of topics that they chose, and we're going to look at student self-reports. I'm examining only a few examples this time, just so we can really hear our students' voices in this. So I might be reading from the slide a little bit more to emphasize their voices. To get started, the CCAP acronym has been a tongue twister for us, but the cultivating connection and purpose, I see very much addressing that question at the bottom of the slide. What is transfer? Can we transfer that connection and purpose that we're teaching in first year writing to their future careers? So as you can see, basically what's happened for me this quarter is I've created a new theme, transfer and career readiness. And before, I had a theme called Writing from the Playlist, where the rhetorical analysis was of a song that they got to choose. Now you can see that might be really interesting, but they might not be making that connection to their career unless they're going to be going into music. After this program, we're looking at a rhetorical analysis of professional writing written by somebody in their chosen major. So some of our students don't know what their majors are. Sometimes they just come thinking they're going to be a business major, still not sure what that means. They're not going to be writing, they think. This might be why they're taking the stretch, because they want to, they don't want to get graded the first time, so it's a credit, no credit on the first section. And so then maybe they'll realize, oh, maybe I do need to write in my major. So that's something that we're going to see in the sample results. So what we're looking for is I set up an assignment through a scaffold where some of the scaffold includes studying the 6 moves that matter in academic writing. And I'm asking them to find out how do those show up in their major. But first they have to figure out what does writing look like in their major. So that becomes part of the scaffold. Well, some of those students may not be sure why they're here. And I wanted to think about why this interest-driven focus works. And part of that is something I call pin topics. And I share this with them. And this is coming from ADHD research, where we're looking at interest-based nervous systems. Now, why might we look at this? In a class of 25, you probably have at least 2 students with ADHD. There's also probably at least 1 autistic student. These pin topics will appeal to their nervous systems. So they'll be talking about play, passion, interest, and novelty. So as you can see, one of the studies is on, this is a sample of what they're reading about. So they're reading a feasibility report about indigenous artisanal confectionery made of swamp buffalo milk. Can you imagine? If you can see this, if you look really closely here, you can actually see the embossing of the buffalo there. And I'm very curious what gulopon tastes like. So we can see some students responding to and showing that community, that connection to their cultivating connection and purpose. So one student wants to go into art gallery administration. This is what she says. This learning impacted my interest in writing because it showed me that writing is directly connected to my future career goals. Writing allows professionals to communicate ideas, build credibility, and connect with different audiences. This concept of transfer is important because it shows that the writing skills I develop in school can be applied beyond the classroom. Instead of viewing writing assignments as temporary, I now see them as opportunities to build skills that support my future career. So here we also have a sports coach. So this student wants to go be a coach, and you can see here, I learned that my writing comes in many different ways as a coach, especially since it's not seen as a job that you write that much. I learned, however, that there is a pretty good chunk of writing for coaches, from the obvious things such as a playbook and practice plan to things that people may not think of as much, like writing a speech for your players or talk to other coaches about things that you do. Also things such as coaches clinics where you can talk to the other coaches about what you teach and focus on. That made me want to do more writing, as I want to be the best coach that I can be. And if it helps me reach the players, then I will do whatever it takes to improve myself as a coach. And then the last example, someone in accounting. All careers end up having to do writing in their field. Analyzing the writing sample made me realize that everybody comes from a different literacy, whether that's the literacy of being a filmmaker, a writer, a teacher. I think he's speaking to us. They all use rhetorical moves in a way that demonstrates their academic understandings by acknowledging their audiences, using specific vocabulary, responding to others that were said about their topics, and many other academic moves. Here he's repeating some of the 6 moves that he learned. The most important thing about transfer is to review the stuff you were taught and use that knowledge in a different situation, as it could help show growth. Practice makes perfect, and I wanted to end on that. So thank you.